Eloise, Bridgerton. So in my last few videos, I have been keeping up with the changing dynamic between Eloise and Penelope and Cressida. It's something I always watch out for while watching the series. And in my last two videos, I've given a lot of grace towards Eloise. I said previously that the friendship rift between Penelope and Eloise, while some immature things had taken place, it was somewhat reasonable. Eloise had the right to be upset, and I hoped that the both ladies would eventually come over their differences and get together while learning new things from one another while they were apart. I thought that perhaps Eloise having new friends would give her a new perspective on life, and Penelope not having friends would push her out of her comfort zone to switch things up. And I was partly right. Penelope did switch things up. In fact, she switched up her whole wardrobe, got married, and was found out as Lady Whistledown, but also grew immensely into herself and her self-confidence, and had a better relationship with her mother. She forged new paths and no longer has to hide. Eloise, on the other hand, hasn't really grown that much. And I hate to say it, but with the release of part 2, Eloise was not a good friend. At least to Cressida, and we need to talk about it. At first, I thought the issue of friendship was between both girls, Penelope and Eloise, because Penelope did have some faults of her own. But now I'm starting to think that Eloise might just in fact be the problem. But before we get into it, first, if you don't know who I am, hi, my name is Deborah, student, singer, songwriter, and everything else between. Welcome back to my channel where I talk about my favorite TV shows and movies, and today we're talking about Eloise. Now let's get to it. So first of all, let's not completely disparage Eloise here. I still like to give a more nuanced view about her character. Let's not forget she is relatively young. If we base this timeline off of the show, Penelope is supposed to be around 19 years old, and I think so is Eloise, between 19 or 20. So naturally, you can understand what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with teenagers. However, in the books, Penelope is supposed to be around 28 years old, and I think so is Eloise. And those are much more mature people. And you see that come forth in their original source material. However, in the show, it becomes clear that they are painfully different. Eloise in the show has been Penelope's best friend throughout the whole entire season 1 and season 2. And a lot of the times, Eloise did come to Penelope's defense when it was necessary, and also helped her foster dreams of perhaps becoming a spinster and just all around being a companion to Penelope. So we're not going to say that she's a completely horrible person or that she's a narcissist, which I've seen some people say. I'm not a psychologist and I cannot diagnose anybody, but I don't think it calls for that. I just think that Eloise is immature and she's very self-centered. And because of the privilege she's grown up in, she can be very selfish. She can have moments where she can be a really good friend, but she can also have moments where she's very much focused on herself and her own issues. Now, she had every right to be upset about what Lady Whistledown / Penelope said about her in her column, but I also do think about how Eloise did not want to listen to Penelope or hear her side of the story or come to an eventual resolution at first. But at the same time, you know, I've had real life situations where people who were close friends had a rift months apart and eventually came back together. So I won't necessarily criticize her on her timeline. I do think, however, that her befriending Cressida was very much out of immaturity because she could have befriended anybody else in the town. But as I've stated previously, Eloise has this problem of sort of judging other women rather than sympathizing with them or empathizing with them because she comes from such a place of privilege. She tends to look down on other women for being frivolous or being focused on marriage or being focused on things that she isn't focused on, which is arguably what men do to women as well, since we live in such a patriarchal society. Men also look down on women and put them in a box and label them to their own interests rather than seeing them as complex human beings. And this is what a lot of the men in their time do. So to see her also do that with a different font is sad. And it also shows you that outside of Cressida, Eloise wasn't really able to make that many friends outside of her family and Penelope. Because in her efforts to try and be different and differentiate herself from the Ton, she simultaneously isolates herself from the other woman and has a very two-dimensional view of who the women are and their situations that they're going through. She has the luxury of having a love match versus the other women who don't even have the luxury of having a kind husband. And this especially came in the form of Cressida. As you recall, Eloise's ignorance when it came to her personal situation was truly mortifying. And it's sad because I thought Eloise was finally growing. I remember the episode in which she went to the ball with Cressida and she was finally able to speak to other ladies and show a part of her personality that is actually very likable. I was happy thinking that we would have some sort of character growth, only to realize that she's not that different from the Ton, and her character growth seemingly regressed within the last 4 episodes, which leads me to my point. Eloise becomes very unlikable very quickly, and her treatment of Cressida solidifies this. When Penelope and Colin get engaged, Eloise starts making these really petty remarks concerning their engagement and even makes a speech trying to basically not only threaten Penelope but make everyone uncomfortable. She even says that if Colin knew who she was, he wouldn't want to be with her. He wouldn't want the real her. But by saying that Colin would never love her without knowing the real her is crazy. The girl owns a gossip magazine. She's not Mystique from X-Men. She's not gonna morph into another human being. I thought that statement was so far-fetched, and it just shows you how Eloise is so out of touch with relationships that she really assumes that by sharing a secret about having a gossip column, her own brother's affection towards somebody would end. Now, obviously, Lady Whistledown is no mere gossip girl. She has ruined lives, and it is a big deal. But as far as I'm concerned, when you're in a relationship with someone and you find out that they've done something or you find out that they've been hiding a secret, majority of the times you work through it, you talk about it, and you find a way to resolve it. You don't just immediately drop a person 5 minutes later. That's not love. And I thought it was a little far-fetched for her to say that, but then it got significantly worse when it came to her and Cressida, and how quickly the whole friendship that they were building in the first 4 episodes literally disintegrated. Eloise becomes so self-involved and so involved with her own agenda, trying to ensure her pettiness against Penelope continues, that she cannot put it aside for one day and be happy for her ex-friend and her brother. She makes it immediately about herself, accusing Penelope of having their friendship being some sort of ruse so that she can get to Colin, as if people do not develop feelings over time, and as if your friends cannot develop feelings for other people in your life. Personally, if someone was just being friends with you to get to your brother, your friendship would have not lasted that long throughout all of your childhood. But Eloise becomes so involved and engrossed in her own ideas and her own agendas that she completely ignores the person who's actually been there for her, at least in the first half of the show, Cressida. And as Cressida's own personal life issues are clearly eating at her, and the girl just wants to rant and have a conversation with somebody about how she's feeling, Eloise is completely emotionally absent, and also somewhat physically absent as well. When Cressida asks her, "Do you not care that I'm being married to a man thrice my age?" Eloise gives this sort of nonchalant answer by saying that she wishes she could shout at her parents, but there's nothing that she could do. What would have been nice to see someone at least put in the mental and emotional effort to comfort her and be there for her friend emotionally. I understand that there is not much truly that a lot of ladies could do at the time. I don't know, maybe this is naive for me to believe, but you at least try with your social standing. Since you have a mother that loves to meddle in relationships and you also have Lady Danbury, you could have tried to put in a word, try and help her find a suitable match. Whether or not it would have been successful, at least you would have put in the effort. But even that for Eloise was too much of an afterthought. Being there emotionally for your friend is the barest minimum for friendship, and it seems that Eloise could not fulfill that either. At first I thought this was just because it's Cressida, but as I look back to her and Penelope's friendship, I realized that this is also a similar pattern. When Penelope was shown as a debutante a year earlier than she wanted, she was very focused on trying to find a match and being focused on marriage, and yet Eloise could not stop talking about Whistledown, being so self-involved. Now, I will remind you that they were young at this time, probably around 16 and 17. But you can see the seeds had been there since the beginning, and it had to take Penelope literally shouting at Eloise before she could finally realize that her friend was physically going through something, despite Penelope showing so much discomfort and non-interest in what she's saying. And that is something that makes her so unlikable. The fact that she cannot stop her own self from talking so much that she completely misses every social cue, not because she can't help it, but because she doesn't care to. Eloise sometimes just cannot see beyond herself. And having that kind of friend in real life would personally also make me very, very irritated. So I understand why a lot of the fandom doesn't like Eloise for now. Not to mention, Eloise sometimes is quite a hypocrite. A lot of the times she says that she would never do something, but she does it anyway. She constantly says that she was keeping Penelope's secret so that she could save or protect Colin's heart or something, or that his heart wouldn't be broken like hers, which can be a fair point.
Trying to make her tell you. And then I thought, why break your heart as well?
But at the same time, she was also pushing Penelope and putting so much pressure on her, as if
did
they
you
had
truly
been
like
friends
her
since their whole entire
or
childhood.
did you befriend her
and she also
simply to
said that
punish
she
me?
wouldn't be as petty,
I'm not
but
so
she was
petty.
petty.
I genuinely enjoyed her at the start, though perhaps the very initial befriending was tinged with just the tiniest bit of petting.
Everything that she did was petty. She befriended Cressida out of pettiness. She was petty at their engagement. She was petty while they were playing charades. She was petty throughout the whole entire show. So she does have a lot of hypocrisy. There are a lot of problems with Eloise. And like I said, these are characters, so I still hold out for perhaps some character growth towards her season. At the end of the day, I'm glad that Penelope and her are still friends. But at the same time, Her red flags are becoming more and more glaring to me, and it's harder to give her the benefit of the doubt. Anyways, let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. I'll see you guys in my next video. Okay, bye.
Oh my.